Hello, it's Nancy today, May 20th, 2008. This is the fifth in a series of videos about the tulips and the Tulip Festival. So NCC is the National Capital Commission. CNN would be in French. This is the legacy of the tulips. It all started, the Dutch princess finds refuge in Canada. On May 10th, without warning, and despite repeated protests from the Dutch affirming their neutrality, the German army crossed the border of the Netherlands. Within days, thousands were dead. The invaders held most of the cities and the important roads and bridges, and the Netherlands surrendered. Following the invasion of the Netherlands, one of the key objectives was to capture the Dutch royal family. Having fled to temporary safety in England, which was itself facing invasion in 1940, Queen Wilhelmina decided to send the crown princess to safety in Canada. In early June 1940, Princess Juliana and her two small daughters secretly boarded a Dutch vessel bound for Halifax. After a long sea voyage, they moved into a rented house in Rockcliffe, Ontario, that's near Ottawa. Safe in the Ottawa region, Princess Juliana was able to take over the reins of government in exile if the need arose. The birth of Princess Marguerite Francisca, the third daughter of Princess Juliana and Prince Bernard, was a symbol of hope and a source of inspiration for the Dutch people who were fighting their survival in Europe. The only royal baby was ever born in North America. Her birth created a living bond between the people of Canada and the Netherlands. To ensure the baby's Dutch citizenship, the Canadian government temporarily ceded a room at the Ottawa Civic Hospital to the Netherlands. Princess Margaret was therefore born a Dutch citizen on Dutch soil on January 19, 1943. The name given to the new princess means daisy, a flower chosen by Queen Wilhelmina as a symbol of resistance and hope in the Netherlands. The birth of the princess rekindled the Dutch determination, although joyful demonstrations were hastily suppressed by the occupiers. The baptism symbolizes alliance. Queen Wilhelmina and Prince Bernhard made the dangerous trip to Canada to attend Princess Margaret's baptism. Together again, the royal family enjoyed a brief period of happiness. Princess Margaret was baptized at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Ottawa on June 29, 1943. The church was filled with Canadian dignitaries, including Prime Minister Mackenzie King, Lord Athlone, Governor-General of Canada, and Maritime Royale, lady-in-waiting and companion in exile to Princess Juliana, attended the baptism as godparents. Symbolizing an international alliance, the princess's many godparents also... Gotta move the camera and read. Where am I? Symbolizing an international alliance, the princess's many godparents also included Queen Mary, the wife of British King George V, and President Franklin D. Roosevelt of the United States. In many ways, Princess Juliana lived an ordinary life in Ottawa. Like so many Canadian women, her husband was serving in the war and she knitted for the soldiers. She also volunteered in a second-hand store set up to raise money for the war effort. In other ways, however, the princess's lifestyle was quite different. She was in constant contact with her mother and husband in England. As her mother's representative, she acted as her people's ambassador, traveling in Canada, the United States, and Netherlands Antilles, visiting military troops and generating support for the war effort. Meanwhile, the daily life of the little princess resembled that of other Canadian children. Princess Beatrix and Irene attended the Rockcliffe Park Public School and played with their friends. Life in the Netherlands. The Nazi police force set out to break the spirit of the Dutch civilians through a campaign of terror. Civilians were shot in the streets by the hundreds. Those who resisted by spying, hiding Jews, or publishing underground newspapers were arrested, tortured, and sent to concentration camps. From May 1940 to May 1945, some 120,000 men were sent as slave labor to Germany. 130,000 Jews were beaten, murdered, or sent to concentration camps in Poland. Under the pressure of the occupation and war, the economy collapsed. By the winter of 1944 to 45, there was no electricity, no fuel for wood stoves, and very little food. A loaf of bread was worth a fortune on the black market, and the starving people were reduced to eating tulip bulbs and sugar beets. The war cost the lives of some 230,000 Dutch civilians, 18,000 of whom succumbed to starvation in the last winter alone. During the last month of the war, the Allies directed their main offensive against Germany. The Canadians, whose mission was to liberate the Netherlands, pushed to the north and west. The enemy had not yet surrendered, and the Canadian advance met with stiff resistance. They liberated village after village, and the Dutch, wild with joy, took to the streets in celebration. By April 28th, German military leaders knew that the end was near. A truce was negotiated, and food began reaching the starving civilian population. General Johannes Blaskowitz, commander of the occupation forces, surrendered to Lieutenant General Fulks of the 1st Canadian Army Corps on May 5, 1945. The war in the Netherlands was finally over. In early May, Queen Wilhelmina and Princess Juliana returned to the Netherlands. The little princess Beatrix, Irene, and Margaret joined their parents later during the summer of 1945. Canadian soldiers were greeted as heroes. After 5 years in hiding, the red, white, and blue national flag reappeared in the towns and villages of the Netherlands, as did the orange standard of the House of Orange. 7,000 Canadian soldiers died in the campaign to liberate the Netherlands. The Dutch were eager to show their gratitude, and the children gathered wildflowers to place on the graves of the soldiers who had fallen on the field of honor. By the thousands, Canadian soldiers laid down their arms and began to rebuild houses, dikes, and bridges. Canadian military physicians attended to civilians, and many troops brought help to the population so cruelly affected by the war. As the guns fell silent, romance blossomed amid the ruins, and lasting bonds were formed between the Canadian and Dutch people. Many of these romances led to marriage. The Canadian government paid the passage for more than 1,800 Dutch war brides and some 400 children to come to Canada. In 1945, Canadian troops participated in the liberation of the Netherlands. Today, Canadian and Dutch people recall these historic events and celebrate the lasting bonds that were created between their countries half a century ago. Thousands of tulips are the visible symbol of Dutch gratitude for the Canadians' heroism. Since the first gift of tulips in 1945, tulips have blossomed each spring in the Canadian capital region. The National Capital Commission is proud to commemorate this important part of our history by planting nearly 1 million tulips every year. Once the war had ended, the people of the Netherlands and Princess Juliana sent the Canadian people many magnificent gifts, including 100,000 tulip bulbs to Canada's capital in gratitude for the involvement of Canadian troops in the liberation. In 1946, Princess Juliana herself gave 20,000 additional bulbs to the country that had given her refuge. Since 1958, the annual gift of 10,000 tulip bulbs from the royal family are added to those donated by the Dutch Bulb Growers Association. In addition to being the guardian of the tulip bulbs given each year, the National Capital Commission, this has got some sun on it, the National Capital Commission also buys thousands of bulbs annually. Today, close to 1 million tulips bloom every spring in the National Capital Region. The tulips are therefore very important, not only because they provide a unique display, but also because they symbolize an international friendship. Well, isn't that heartwarming? This is Nancy today. This is the 5th video. Tulips at the Tulip Festival in Ottawa.